I can lose face and feel nothing, Yaemon. Do not worry. But what will it feel like when you lose yours?
Hey guys, my name is Shermie. I have a lot of different names and I just really like lore. This time around, we got a new short story called Ambush, and I wanted to break down a lot of the lore things I noticed in it. Now, this one serves as an epilogue to the story of Season 3, basically, so there are going to be a couple loose ends that I'll talk about at the end that I could see going somewhere in the future, but yeah. Before we get into that and getting right into the breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe. That stuff really helps the channel, and it helps me see what you guys like out of this stuff, so yeah. Anyways, we're going to be doing a quick breakdown of the story, Ambush, if you haven't read it yet. Then I'll be talking about a lot of the really cool lore things we got out of it. Then, probably a little segment on my thoughts. The story begins with Shion meeting with the Hashimoto elders. Finally, we get to hear a bit about each of them and get their names. Tsubaki Serizawa is one of the elders and kind of wears a Muki Mugama style makeup. I hope I pronounced that right. Kohaku Ogata is one of the other elders as well, and they wear an embroidered tiger skin blazer. Dmon is the oldest, and is a man in his 60s. Sierra Horvath has platinum blonde hair, and is wrapped up in a ponytail. Now, the man in his 60s, Dmon and Sierra, or Sarah, I don't know how you pronounce her name yet, those two were actually seen and first kind of noticed in Hanzo's short story a while ago, so we have actually gotten to see them before. The elders confront Shion about how poorly the train heist went, and say working with a barbarian such as Vendetta was a really bad move. Shion disagrees, saying that thanks to Talon, they now own Japan, but the elders bring up how Vendetta didn't get all her anima tech, and are worried that Vendetta's going to strike back at them. As well, Talon is slowly leaving Japan, and the elders are worried about what that means. Shion disagrees completely with their worries, and tells them to stay in line. Here, she remembers the original elders, and how she got rid of them and rose up, becoming the leader of the Hashimoto. She threatens the current elders, saying she could remove any of them whenever she wished. They all fall back in line, and ask what Shion wants to do next. She says not to worry about Overwatch, or Talon, or even the kids in Kanazaka. They've infiltrated the police force, and eliminated all the other rival families, so Japan is theirs. She also decides not to tell them about Mizuki or Toshiro. Not out of worry, but out of something that would be an annoyance to deal with. So, her worries and focus goes towards Mizuki, trying to get him and stop him, but also maybe try to get him back. Meanwhile, the elders are worrying about if their hold on Japan would ever fall, but Shion assures the elders, saying their hold is super strong, and won't fall anytime soon. So, yeah. That's the end of the Japan storyline for now. There's a couple of really cool little references and little Easter eggs that I found in here that I'll go ahead and break down now. First off, a smaller one that I noticed was there's a lot of images that go along with the story, and one of them, you can see Shion at a bar. Now, in this bar, she has a Don Rumbatico drink. It's spelled like Dom Rumbatica, so it's probably the feminine version, or maybe it's just a mispronunciation or misspelling. But I thought that was really fun and a really small reference to Don Rumbatico, which is on Havana. That is actually owned by Maximilian, so there is a fun little lore nod to all that there. Now, on to some bigger scale things. I mentioned in my breakdown, but two of the elders, the older man Dmon, and the other one Sierra, I still can't pronounce her name, those two were actually in Hanzo's short story from before. Now, in that short story, they were not mentioned by name, they were just mentioned as an older man and a younger woman who had platinum hair, I think. I'd have to go back and read that to be sure, but those two have been mentioned before. It's really cool to finally get them, by the way. We knew there were 4 other elders for a while now. We knew there was 5 in total, but 4 more aside from Shion, and it's just good to get a good look at them, or, well, at least a good description of them finally. With the elders, though, we kind of have an idea that all of these people, aside from Dmon, who seems to be the oldest one, are a little bit younger. This is obviously showing that Shion has eliminated elders in the past, and probably the kind of seat gets filled pretty frequently. But it is something I wanted to bring up as well. Another thing in this story is, in the images itself, you can see Shion keeps the same kind of Omnic guards with her throughout her entire life, really, in the Hashimoto. So this could mean a couple things, but for me, I think it's trying to symbolize and show that if you're an Omnic in the Hashimoto, you're given a little bit more leeway than you are a human. That isn't to say she wouldn't, like, eliminate you if you did bad, but I do think she kind of holds them in higher regard. It also shows that these two, or at least Omnics in general, have always been around her and kind of worked alongside her in a way. Now that she's in charge, she probably keeps Omnics with her a lot. In fact, in her hero trailer, she's really surrounded by these kind of same Omnic guards. So that's something I wanted to point out here as well. Another thing I want to bring up with all this as well is the train heist. So that did not go as planned. Of course, they lost most of the anima tech in this heist. However, they did in fact manage to get a few crates to Vendetta. One of which is, of course, Vendetta's anima weapon. We know this from in-game interactions. I'll go ahead and play the most important one here.
You may not have accomplished all I desired, but what you did deliver shows great potential.
Potential? I handed you carnage in a pretty package.
It takes more than a honed edge to earn my praise. A weapon must prove itself in battle.
But with that interaction, we do know that anima tech is going to be important to Vendetta's plan, and she got most of it, or at least the one she needed. Now, where is this taking Vendetta and Shion? Well, I've always said the Hashimoto are probably not going to be sticking with her, and it sounds like Vendetta's already kind of done with them, and maybe as like a power play, moving her forces away to show that she's disappointed. However, this is the biggest part of this season for me, and it's probably the most important part in general. The anima tech was supposed to go to Vendetta, and it did, or at least her weapon did. So, yeah, Shion and the Hashimoto, their part in this story is seemingly done for now. Another big thing is Shion and Mizuki's relationship not being brought up really here, and not telling the other elders about it. This is going to be something that bites Shion in the back later, obviously. This is going to come back in a big way. I'm not really sure how yet, but this could be leading to a storyline next year. Maybe we see the Hashimoto try to rise against Shion, and maybe that goes poorly, or maybe it succeeds, and we'll have to see where that goes then. Lastly, for the major story beats here, I want to talk about Shion's past for a bit, because we finally have 2 images of her. The first image is when she was originally captured by the Hashimoto, so you can see it here on screen. A thing that I want to point out is, no, she was not actually a training bot, like from the practice range. She was used as a training bot. Basically, she was beaten and abused here by the elders of the Hashimoto originally. The second image that we get shows her rising up and eliminating them all, actually getting rid of them in the same room as she is right now, coincidentally. This building has been with the Hashimoto for a very, very long time. This part of her past and the short story itself focuses a lot on it. Now, it's not in the audio version of the short story, so I highly, highly recommend you guys go read the online version of it. It's online on the Blizzard website, but you can also find it in a couple other places. Very good short story. Not one of my favorites, ironically enough. I still think that goes to like the Doomfist story from this season. That one's pretty high up there, but it is a pretty good capstone to this season so far. And yeah, those are most of the lore connections that you can make out of all this. Now I want to talk about where I think this storyline is probably going to be going in the future. Because, well, it's going to be in limbo for a while, and I want to talk about why. Because of getting heroes every season, we kind of constantly need to move around the world now. And next up should be Dmon in Busan. So Shion and everything going on in Japan is going to be left behind. The last thing that happened here, basically that's the most important, is Genji is staying in Japan with Kiriko and Hanzo, and he's going to be working with the yokai. Aside from that, Shion, like I said earlier, is probably going to have to deal with them at some point. I could see an uprising happen, and maybe we get a hero out of this next year. Heroes seem to be the way we go back to these storylines now, if Mizuki and Shion are anything to talk about. Mizuki really was the main character here, and now that he's with Overwatch, I think they put him in that position so Shion could join the main storyline again and work with Vendetta. Her relationship to Mizuki is a little weird, obviously. They're like a mother-son dynamic in a sense, so that connection is going to be pretty strong between them. I do think that we're going to be going back to them and focusing on them at some point. I'm just not sure when we're going to be doing that. These two feel like they're going to have another meeting at some point. I mean, they kind of have to. And with another hero down the road, maybe a member of the yokai or maybe a new member of the Hashimoto, we could see that. I don't know where the story is going to be going for now, but I think the Japan storyline is going to be entering kind of a, not a pause, but a extended absence for a little bit as we focus on the grander scale of things. Like I said, next season is probably going to Junkertown and Busan, so we're going to be focusing on that instead. Now, this story I think was a pretty good one. I really like how they did this, and I do like how we finally got to see a bit more of Shion's past. That was pretty much needed for the entire season. I do think there is an issue I want to bring up with when the backstory was fully revealed. Now, I don't think this was bad or anything. In fact, I think I'm just happy we got it. However, I do wish we had gotten this a little bit sooner, either in a comic or in a standalone story on its side. However, I am happy with what we got here. I'm glad we got to see more about Shion, and it was really good to get her in her own position for a little bit, being her own main character or something, because she hasn't had a solo story yet, but now she has. Anyways, these are the lore things that I found in the new story. What did you guys think of it? Next season, we're going to be moving away from Japan, so I wish we had spent a little bit more time here, but I would love to hear what you guys have to say about it. Did you enjoy this story? Do you like Shion? And of course, are you excited for where the story is going to be going next? Because, well, there's a lot of places it's going to be going. Anyways, that's all from me, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye!